Hello and welcome to an episode of Rustacean Station. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I'm with Rebecca Rumbul, who is the CEO and I think it's the Chief Executive of the Rust Foundation. You said you have two titles. And, whatever you want to call her, she's basically the buck stops at her and anything concerning the Rust Foundation. Luckily, I was introduced to you from Florian. Thank you again, Florian, for the introduction. And I'm happy that we can have this conversation because we were talking about before the show, I don't exactly understand what the Rust Foundation is. I understand just a little bit, doing some research that you guys are here to help maintainers. As we were talking before, you said that the mission also kind of changed a little bit from 2020. So we can discuss that. Maybe other than that, maybe you can just do a quick intro about yourself. I'm talking too much. It's your turn to shine now.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on, Alan. It's great to be here. Yes, so as you said, I'm Beck Rumbul. I'm the new Executive Director and CEO of the Rust Foundation. I've only been in post since November, so about four and a half months at this point. And I've come to the Rust Foundation from a kind of non-profit research digital democracy background. So before coming here, I was at My Society, which was an international charity that was supporting software and open source software for digital democracy and helping a lot of governments and parliaments make their digital offer better for citizens. So it's quite a change. But I'm really enjoying it at the moment. And it's, everyone in the Rust community has been fantastic and very welcoming so far.
Well, that's good because, developers are known to be not so welcoming to beginners, right? And you're not a very technical person, as you kind of stated before. So it's good that, you're very welcomed, right?
I didn't realize I haven't come across any developers that have been too judgmental about my lack of development skills. And, I've been very upfront about that as well. I'm not going to try and have an opinion about the technical aspects of the compiler. That's not my job. That's for people that actually know what they're talking about on those things.
So maybe we could talk about maybe we can talk more about what it is that you do and then maybe lead into what it is that the foundation does, or maybe it's better to talk the other way. I'm not sure what's easier to say.
Should we start at the foundation? I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like I said, I don't really know what the foundation does, right? And I think a lot of people are kind of worried because, if we talk about the beginning of this whole foundation, right? So it came from like Mozilla kind of letting go, that I understand. This is my understanding of how everything kind of happened. You're shaking your head yes for people who can't see you.
Sorry.
It's okay. So what I understand is that Mozilla was kind of running most of it. They ran into some troubles. They had to let go of people, a lot of key people within Rust. And then this kind of panic came about. And then some people came together and said, let's make a foundation. And there's like a whole legal entity and there's a lot of stuff involved around it. But it's not like people who are working on the core team have to be employed by this foundation, not like kind of a little bit like it's seen before. So like, what is it that the foundation is actually doing? And, is there anything I can see that they've actually done? Like, what can I see that they've done, right? In terms of like, every time I do a Rust update, I update my Rust compiler on my machine. That's not from Rust Foundation, right? So what kind of things are they doing and what are they focusing on?
Okay, so you are right about the kind of history. Rust as a language, yes, it was incubated inside of Mozilla. I think there comes a point with a lot of new languages where people start either realizing that this is actually going to be a really useful, really kind of valuable tool. Or, in the case of some other languages, people are like, do you know what? This isn't actually going to be useful. We actually, this isn't going to do what we hoped it would do. Rust is so great that it became very clear, I think quite early on, that it could be huge and it could be a really valuable technology. As you say, it got to the point where I think for Mozilla, it didn't seem appropriate to keep it in-house any longer. It's supposed to be an open source project, an open source movement, and it doesn't sit well I don't think, for a lot of languages to just exist solely inside one organization. So it was spun out, and it, obviously became clear that because Mozilla wasn't therefore going to be responsible for a lot of the kind of assets, the trademarks, the copyright, that kind of thing, that there needed to be some kind of legal entity that was. An awful lot of people put an awful lot of work into figuring out what a kind of organization, what a kind of legal entity would look like that would steward the language. So whereas with a lot of other open source languages, you have a foundation that is very much more hands-on and is very much more hierarchical. I think they take a very top-down approach. Rust is pretty unique and I think really special in the way that it's organized, which is still very much based on those kind of consensus-based values. So it was down to a few people within the community, as I say, who put a lot of work in, a lot of effort in the early days a few years ago to try and get the foundation off the ground and to figure out how it would work as a kind of complement to the project teams, the maintainers, the wider community, the user base, rather than creating an organization from which everything was going to be directed. So maybe that's a bit of a flowery way of saying foundation is here to act as a steward. It's here to act as a legal entity so that, people who are doing their thing with Rust, with the programming, do not have to worry about copyright law or registering trademarks in China or, legal questions, issues, all of those kinds of things. Those are things that you need a staff to do. Quite frankly, if you're volunteering your own time, those are not things I imagine an awful lot of people that enjoy programming want to do. So that's one of the things we're here for. We're here for a lot of the admin, legal, financial bureaucracy that either cannot or should not necessarily be done by people who are just volunteering or by people who aren't employed and bound by certain covenants.
Can we maybe give some examples of sorry for butting in, but I just wanted to make it like super clear. How about we give some examples, right? So something that comes to mind is like, let's say that somebody makes a library called like Pepperidge Farm, right? And then maybe Pepperidge Farm says, we don't like that, we're going to sue you. Would I be able to contact Rust Foundation and say, hey, I got this problem. Can you guys help me? Because you said you do deal with the legal part. Would that be covered in this situation? Sure.
So I, as a British person, I don't know what Pepperidge Farm is, but I'm assuming it's some sort of brand that...
They make cookies and stuff. I don't know. Whatever the Queen likes to eat for her cookies. I know she's a big cookie fan. Whatever kind of brand, right? So Company X, right? I make a Company X library. Company X says, we don't like you using this name, right? Because people sometimes just put puns on things. Would this be something that Rust Foundation, I can contact them, no matter how big or small my library is in terms of popularity? Could I actually come to Rust Foundation and say, I got this problem, how can I handle this? Or what kind of, is this a situation?
Sure. So we have to be kind of legally responsible for anything that's in the crates, for instance. So yeah, if you register with Pepperidge Farm, in there, then we are registered with the copyright agency in the US. And we obviously need to figure out, okay, is this actually okay under copyright law? Are we going to fall foul? Are we going to be facing lawsuits, and proceed from there? So yes, we have lawyers who we consult about these things and figure out, okay, this isn't something that we can support. Then we might have to talk about, changing names or anything like that. So it's, there is a level of responsibility that we have there because legally, these are things that we are here to worry about.
Now, does it matter how big or small in terms of popularity my library is that would help or not help me? Or is it just like, as long as I'm committing and helping people in the Rust community, I can actually say, hey, Rust Foundation, I need some help with something that you guys can help with?
We're here to help all of the maintainers and contributors to the project. So yeah, you don't have to have like a certain number of gold stars on GitHub to ask for our help. obviously we have finite resources just like everyone else. So yeah, obviously if what you're asking for is something that's relatively minor, low risk, it might not be the first email I answer that day, but we are here to help absolutely everyone. What we can't do is provide legal advice. We can obviously talk to the lawyers that we have contracted, but I am not in position to give you legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. And because of the way, legal agreements are made, I couldn't get information from my legal counsel and then just parrot it straight to you. That doesn't have legal protection.
Something I remember, we're talking before the show, one of the things you guys can cover is, or at that time you guys could cover is like if I'm working on a library and my team is remote, that's kind of working together with us, and we found some kind of software that we think would be very helpful for us. I can come to you and say, hey, will the Rust Foundation actually cover this? Is that still something that you guys are looking at? So if I actually need something, maybe like I started using Basecamp today, I'm kind of liking it. And so like, can I say, hey, I want to use Basecamp for my thing. It's $99 a month. Can you guys cover that? Or can we get a license for all of us or something like that?
Sure. So we are already trying to accommodate reasonable requests for any kind of support like that, especially relatively low level ones, relatively low cost ones. A lot of those are kind of no brainers. If this is what you need to be able to do what you do, then we will absolutely 100% consider those things. It really depends in terms of like cost and ongoing sustainability as to whether we kind of say, okay, well, is this just something that you need, or is this something that actually we think a lot of people in the community will need? In which case, should we look at providing, a certain number of licenses so that lots of people can use? So, as a very basic example, recently we've been setting up Zoom licenses for the project teams themselves so that, they don't have a 45-minute limit on using a free service, or they don't have to rely on someone's private license or work license or whatever. So yeah, lots of these things are completely reasonable requests that you can totally come to the foundation about. Things that are slightly bigger, potentially a lot more expensive. We have a grants fund opening next month, which again, that's something that we can kind of look at in terms of, okay, this is a high cost, but if it's going to create X benefit, then we can potentially fund it under that.
Well, that's a good point, right? So, I mean, if anybody keeps coming to you, if I can get a 120 core CPU on my machine, that I can compile things much faster for the community. But the question is, how much will that really help the community, right? So how do you kind of measure that? That's really difficult to measure, right? Because, yeah, I guess you have to take a look at how many people are actually downloading it. What do you think? It sounds very, what's the term for that? Subjective at times, no?
Yeah, very much so. And quite frankly, I don't think at the foundation we want to be in a position where we are making really, really big judgments on the value of different work. I think an awful lot of the time, as you say, it's going to be very subjective. With the grants program, we're going to have a kind of scoring matrix, which basically kind of places the importance on the impact on the rest of the community as well. So it's not just, is this really cool? It's how much is this going to benefit all of the maintainers or all of the other end users, and we're asking people to kind of explain that to us, so that it's really, really clear what people feel that, their contribution is, how this fits into the wider Rust ecosystem.
So do you have the details for that yet, or that's still being hashed out?
We are still finalizing the details. So we did have a survey that was live for a month, last month, where we were inviting opinions from all of the community. We had a really good response to that survey. So a lot of people came back with the kind of ideas and guidance, advice on how they think it should run, what they think should be prioritized in terms of funding. We will actually be publishing a blog on that on the 17th of March. So that's tomorrow. I don't know when this is going live, so that might already be in the past by the time people hear this. So that's going to be published And the actual program where it'll be open for applications is going to open on the 1st of April. So within a couple of weeks, we're hoping that there will be quite a few different potential funding streams people can look at and say, okay, that's something that I can, I have a project that I want to do. I can apply into this funding stream, or I want some ongoing help. I'm potentially going to apply for this particular funding stream here.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I know there is actually a couple of people in Rust community who are actually doing something similar. I remember there was a guy who was talking to me about a month ago where his employer was putting money into a fund, and they were planning to use that fund to actually fund developers, right? So like they put like $100K or something to it.
DevX initiative.
I think that's the one, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. Have you guys thought to work together on this, or is it just totally separate?
So I think the person I've been talking to is Ernest Kissiedu. He is.
That's the guy.
Yes, great. Okay,
you guys are next door, right? He's in London too.
He's in London, yes. So Ernest has actually been extremely, extremely kind and generous to me in the last couple of months. He has introduced me to a lot of different Rust user groups, and yeah, has given me advice on the grants program, because obviously him and DevX have been working on this already. And I can remember a few people sort of saying, oh, isn't this going to be, in competition? Isn't this, how's that going to work? I think it's fantastic that there's another fund that's supporting Rust's contributors. I absolutely think that plurality in this space is a good thing. Surely the more money there is for contributors, the more the contributors, maintainers, the community themselves are winning. So yeah, I've had several conversations with Ernest, and the point is not to replicate things. The point here is to work to complement each other. So they are funding in one certain way. How we will set up our awards are probably going to be a bit different, but they won't be in opposition at all.
Okay, it's good to hear that you already know about this. I know I think a couple of others are doing something similar, so I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, how can you compete, right? If I can get multiple sources of funding to keep going on Rust, I think that's fantastic, right? More the merrier.
Sure.
But I don't know if it's better to put your money together and try to push things out better, or maybe if we can pick up more, I don't know what's better. Is it better to have the same amount, but from one source, or different sources piling together? I don't know. That's a tricky one.
I think, as I said, plurality in my view is better, because you're hopefully not creating dependencies on one source of income or one source of support. So I think that's useful. I think the other thing is that different organizations have, different priorities, different ways that they want to push out that funding. So maybe, potentially if you're ineligible for one of those funds, you might be eligible for the other. I think it's good to have more than one source here. And as I say, I'm making sure that I've got an open line to them as well, so that we know we're not overlapping or at odds with each other.
So you're not going to be competing to throw money at specific projects, is that right?
Yeah, no, I want to throw money at this project. No, I do.
Well, I don't know. That's when people start to worry, right? It's like, if DevX or Rust Foundation is throwing money at this project, now does that mean that this project will be listening to what they're saying? That's always the complicated part, right? And that's something that I think needs to be, you guys are probably going to make that very clear that, hey, we're throwing money at this, but not for something in return other than making the community better, right?
Sure. So, and this is something that's common across open source communities, a concern that the dominance of a foundation or the dominance of a corporation or particular funder is essentially going to capture the direction of the community, right? And I've heard these concerns from various people. And, I hope that as the foundation grows and as we implement our programs, that it's obvious that that's not the case. I think with Rust, we're really lucky to have, again, a plurality of corporations on our board. So it's not just one big tech organization that is bringing all the money and the resources and therefore is demanding that money be spent in a certain way. We have a partnership of big tech organizations who are all equally weighty and who are all equally contributing. And this means that it's, I think, much harder to assume that there's going to be specific capture, because all of those organizations have different priorities as well. So I think, Rust is actually in a pretty good place in terms of it being quite difficult to capture the community or the direction of work just because of who's on the board or who's writing the checks.
Okay, so let's say that I want to join the Rust Foundation as an individual. Is that actually possible, or do I have to actually be employed by Rust Foundation?
Sorry, this is so our membership situation, our bylaws, that there's a little bit of untidiness and a little bit of complexity in there. I would like, in the fullness of time, to actually be able to simplify this so it's easier for people who are interested. At the moment, the individual members are the core team. Other than the core team, we do not have a process where we have individual members of the foundation as such. We have corporate members. So our platinum members are on the boards. We have a lot of silver member organizations who have a representative on the board. And these are corporates, so they provide quite a lot of resources and support, and obviously hire people from within the project and the community. We are hopeful that at some point soon we will be able to have individual members, but we want to be able to set that up properly. We want to know what the offer is. At the moment, I've come into this post and there's an awful lot of questions which I think we need to answer before we just start saying, yeah, come and join. What does that mean? What does it mean to be a member of the foundation? What are you getting that you don't get if you're not a member? So these are questions that we're wrestling with internally, and as and when we are able to offer individual memberships, hopefully it will be clear what the benefits are.
Okay. Yeah. Because it could be that maybe I'm just an ambassador and I'm just there to kind of say, hey, you should try Rust or something like that. Or maybe that's one way to kind of get people in. I'm not too sure. But I'm happy that you guys are looking at this problem because, all I see is board members and companies, and I don't see anybody else outside of that. So that makes sense, and I understand.
Sure. I think we're still in a really sort of young, growing position. I realize that the foundation has been kind of in existence and, has been doing some things for nearly, a year and a half now. But in reality, there wasn't any staff resource before I came on board in November to do a lot of these things. So I realize there's a demand and people would really love all of the details on all of these things immediately. And all I can say is we are definitely thinking about them. We're definitely working on them, but we do need to think about things properly before we start offering things, because I'd like for those things to be meaningful as and when they do happen.
So what if I'm a business owner and I really love Rust and I want to help out, and I think that helping the Rust Foundation is a way to go, right? You said that basically the company membership is very clear. It's already in existence. You got Huawei, I think, is on board, and a few others. Amazon, definitely. How can I, as a business owner, get aboard at this? And if I'm small and if I'm large, right? What kind of things can you guys? How can I help?
Right. Well, as you said, we have an enormous spectrum of businesses that are helping us out as sponsors or as members. So our corporate members, we have, as you say, the really big boys like Huawei and AWS. They are platinum membership, so they, spend a certain amount of money, they get a board seat. That's great, but that's not the kind of money that small businesses can throw around, right? We have lots and lots of smaller corporate organizations that love Rust and, have actually just emailed out of the blue and said, we really want to support. How can we do that? So most of those have now become silver members. There are details on the Rust Foundation website on membership fees, and there is a scale for silver members as well, so that a lot of silver members, if you have a very small company, if you don't have a really high turnover or high employee count, or indeed if you actually employ people that are working on the Rust project directly, there are a lot of discounts available there, that you are still, you can still become a member, and you are still represented on the board by one of the other silver members. He was actually elected to the board very recently. So yeah, he's representing all of the voices of the company that are in the silver membership.
Can you talk about some of the benefits of silver and the other tiers? So if I wanted to kind of mull this over in my head as I'm driving to work and out of my web browser.
Sure. The platinum level is obviously, that's our highest tier. That is approximately $300,000 a year. But again, there are discounts depending on, who you hire. And if you hire project members, then you pay less money. The great thing about platinum membership is it's a direct seat on the board. So you are there all of the time, holding me to account for the running of the foundation. You have direct input into pretty much everything that we do. You have a direct line to me, and, you can obviously voice opinions on pretty much everything, the minutiae of the foundation. You're also in a position to, comment on the budget and say, well, actually, I think we should put resources over here. And that's obviously a board discussion. Gold membership is about $150,000 a year, again, depending on discounts that might apply. That means that for every 4 gold members, there is a board seat. So if you're a gold member, you have kind of a 1 in 4 chance of being elected to the board. Silver membership, the absolute top of silver membership is, I think, $85,000 a year. But again, a lot of discounts below that. And we have 1 silver board director representing all of the silver membership. So at the moment, we have, I think we have about 23 silver members. Hopefully that will be more. People, the membership continues to grow. But again, that's just one board representing all of those voices.
And no silver members have access to you, it sounds like. That was one of the things you said you can get as the top tier.
Everyone has access to me. Obviously, as a board director, you have very, very frequent access to me. In fact, I'm sure most of the governing board are bored of hearing from me by now, because they get an awful lot of emails and documents from me. If you are not on the board, though, obviously you're not getting all the board papers every month. You're not in on subcommittee meetings and that kind of thing. But I'm here for anyone. If anyone in the community wants to talk to me about something, then I will try and make myself available to them. I feel like it's my job to be as responsive and supportive to maintainers, contributors, end users as possible.
Be careful what you ask for. You might be getting some interesting emails. You said the community is so nice, right? But you might be getting some really interesting emails.
I'm here to help. Obviously, I'm not here for agony aunt advice or anything like that. And I can't, there are things I can't do, but I can always listen. If you have ideas or thoughts or requests, if they are reasonable, I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Okay, so Rust Foundation, you're here to help steer. You can provide legal advice. You can help with getting some tools. Probably also maybe even connecting people together, right? If you could say, hey, I'm interested in working on this, maybe you guys can also connect people together now. I'm sure that must be happening too.
Obviously, there is this distinction between the foundation and between the project and the project teams. So I can obviously act as a bit of a signpost to people. Sometimes if it's something very specific that people want to know about, it might be easier to go directly to one of the team members. Because obviously I could, we communicate, but I am not in any position to delegate, shall we say, to the team. So I would never dream of trying to say to anyone in the core team, you need to do this. That's not my place. That's not the foundation's place. The core team will decide their own priorities, as will the other teams. And it's really just my job to be supportive. So sure, I can signpost people. But I certainly can't compel anyone to do anything.
No, I'm just thinking like if I have like maybe a library that's quite popular, but I'm no longer able to maintain it for whatever reason, maybe I can say, hey, there's this library I think is really important. I haven't found somebody to kind of take it over. Do you know anybody who may be able to do that? Maybe you guys have connections with that, or you can reach out to your silver partners to say, hey, this thing is really important. Is anybody able to step up and
Yeah,
kind of,
potentially.
I'm guessing that's something you guys can probably do, right?
Yeah, potentially. I think one of the things we're trying not to do is tread on toes or recreate things that already exist and that are already really useful. So, there's a lot of resources around Rust in terms of communicating, in terms of, investigating new opportunities or anything. So I think a lot of people come to us and say, oh, have you got a newsletter? Can you like put my job listing in it or something? It's like, actually, we just, as a foundation, we sponsor This Week in Rust because that's an amazing newsletter. It already exists. And why would we try and replicate it or take it over? This is something that is already there and it's much loved and it works. So, we're trying to make sure we're fitting in and supporting things that already exist rather than just needlessly recreating things.
That's a good point. So I had no idea that you guys are sponsored. So when you say sponsor, what are you actually doing to help that? Because I thought this was all done by Nell Shamrell-Harrington. I can't remember exactly how to say her name or that person's name.
Yes. So Nell is very involved in This Week in Rust. She's one of our board members. She represents Microsoft on the Rust Foundation board. And I know she works with some other people to put it together. They don't need an enormous amount of funding to put that newsletter out, but the foundation will pay for instance, I think I want to say MailChimp or whatever email system it is to get it out. That's a very, very reasonable cost to support something that is so useful.
So, I guess I can come back to you guys and say, can you guys help support the Rustacean Station podcast then? No.
Hey, I'm as I said, I'm open to conversations about all things. I can't promise that they will always be, end in writing checks or anything, but certainly I'm always open to the argument to be laid out.
Oh, now it's nice to hear. Now let me start writing down my Christmas list. Christmas is coming early for me. I need a $1,000 mic so that I sound better. This RGB mic is not RGB enough. We have to boost it up. It's for the community, okay?
It's disappointing no one can see this mic because it's one of the sexiest microphones I've ever seen. And I'm here and I didn't even have the right adapter for my headphones to record this properly.
Yeah. So people said my videos is too boring, so I had to spice it up a bit. So that's okay. I don't need the payment for that. But no, it's good to hear that even something like these kind of not even direct projects, right? So things that are, like you said, the This Week in Rust, that you guys can actually give some support to. I had no idea about that part. That makes sense.
There's lots of this kind of thing out there. People have been doing things kind of off their own backs or just holding things together with, dental floss and gum. And it's like, we're very, very happy to support things, as I said earlier, that have a very clear benefit to the community. And I think what I would say to people is that don't assume we know how any of it's been funded or don't assume we know everything. The Rust ecosystem is quite vast and, we don't have a list of everything that's going on in it. So if I haven't approached you to offer to support anything, it's not because I don't think it's of value. It might be because I have no idea how it's currently supported, or that you might need support for it. I don't want people to think that if we haven't had a conversation already that we don't think it's valuable.
Yeah. And actually, that's pretty funny that you mentioned that. You actually had no idea about this podcast, right? Before we started chatting over email. Is that right?
I didn't. No. Again, there's you could disappear down rabbit holes when you're searching about Rust things as well. I've watched quite a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you know how it is. You go off on a kind of YouTube tangent, and it's 3 hours later, and you think, oh, I surely must have watched everything on YouTube by this point, but actually, you've only watched a couple of things. So no, there's lots and lots of content, and I'm still in the process of mapping out where all the resources are.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess the moral of the story is better to ask and get a no than to not ask and could potentially get some kind of help, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
How often do you say no? I think you're very comfortable with saying no to people. I have that feeling when we're chatting together.
I have to say no sometimes. It's the curse of being the boss. You're never going to be a truly popular person. But that's my job. I'm here to worry about the budget. I'm here to worry about where money's going. And unfortunately, I have to make unpopular decisions sometimes and, deal with the Twitter or Reddit fallout or whatever. But, that comes with the territory. And if I wasn't here making unpopular decisions, I'm sure someone else would be.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get from you is that you're more than happy to make the tough decisions, and I guess that's why you're put in that position. Is that you can accept that, and that's not easy to accept, right? You can please some people some of the time, but not everybody all the time. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. If any of these decisions, the community grant program that we're opening next month, I'm hopeful that a majority of people are going to be pleased with it or happy with it. I realize that there are going to be some people that I will never bring round. There are going to be some people that are disappointed. I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to explain why we've made the decisions that we've made and that those will seem reasonable. But it's just the way it goes. And, I'm willing for people to argue. I'm willing for people to come back and lay out a case that demonstrates that I'm wrong. And if I am, then we'll change tack. But as you say, not 100% of people are going to be happy 100% of the time. So we're just going to do our best to make the majority of people as happy as we can.
I'm kind of curious about, maybe we can talk more about Nell's weekly newsletter. How is it that you guys judge that this is such a necessity? Did her board seat, or I'm not sure which pronoun that person uses. Is it she or he? I'm not too sure.
Nell.
Yeah.
She.
Just want to make sure I got it right. So Nell, so she said that, hey, I got this newsletter. It's very popular. People really get a lot out of it. Can I get support for that? Right. And then you guys must have, what was the process like to actually judge if that's actually worth putting, not worth, but how do I say that? What's the terminology for that? What would you call that? Like if the support you would give would have a 10x, something like that, is that how you would say it?
Yeah. I think for us, it's more about, okay, is this impactful? Is this useful? And I think it's both. It's the main, I think, newsletter in Rust. It's incredibly comprehensive. And it was a very, very kind of low cost ask, to support it. So, that kind of thing is a no brainer. I don't know anyone in the Rust community that doesn't get This Week in Rust. What I would say is that it wasn't by virtue of Nell being on the board. Nell has been active in the community a lot longer than she's been on the board of the Rust Foundation. And, this wasn't I've got access to the people that hold the purse strings, so therefore I'm going to get first dibs. That was not the case at all.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my follow-up question. Because it makes sense, right? If Amazon's paying, $300K or so, or maybe even $1 million, right? I don't know what it's up to them, whatever they pay. But if they're contributing a significant amount, that should carry some weight, no? Or is it really everybody's totally fair? Sorry, go ahead.
Of course it carries some weight. But as I said, it doesn't enable any of the companies to monopolize what we do. And it doesn't really give an enormous amount of access to, shortcutting processes for things. Amazon, Microsoft, these organizations, if they want something done in Rust, they can just hire some people to do it, right? They don't have to get the foundation to do it by proxy. What they do need is, to be able to support the actual community to actually be able to kind of leverage the money out there and to leverage out the things that they can't deal with. So yeah, sponsoring a newsletter is probably not something that Microsoft or AWS are going to want to think about because it's such a tiny thing. It's such a very small thing that the accounts department probably don't even write text for a month. That's all. So this is what's useful about having the foundation here to make sure that these kinds of community resources can be supported quite easily. And again, it doesn't matter if you're on the board or not. If something is obviously useful, if something is obviously valuable, and it doesn't matter if the email to me is from a board member or from someone in the community. It's about the impact and the usefulness of the thing that you want funded that will make the difference.
That's a great feedback, though. Now I'm kind of wondering in my mind, like, okay, what is it that would make a company pay $300K to get that kind of seat? Like, because I mean, like you said, access to you, people can still get that. You don't have to actually pay that much money to get, I think, a lot of these things, right? You could just ask. That's what I found out in the community, is that you could just send somebody a message and say, hey, and they're really likely to reply, right? So what is it that I would be getting on this as a large company?
I think I would say this is primarily a question for the corporate board members that are writing the checks for this kind of money. I personally think it's about goodwill. It's about showing support. It's about enabling investment. Again, the kind of grants that we'll be giving out, these aren't the kinds of things that AWS or Microsoft would do. Google is not going to sponsor individuals to work on Rust for, I don't know, a couple months. That's not what Google is going to be interested in doing. They just want to be able to give a chunk of money and know that someone else is doing all of that administration, doing all the thinking and worrying about how to create the programs and eligibility and farm out money and all of that kind of stuff. I think, that money is paying for the foundation also to operate, all of that kind of boring legal stuff that has to be done, all of the time that I spend talking to a trademark China about why we can't register the Rust trademark in Singapore, because apparently Rust is such a well-known industry term. All of their money pays for all of this to happen as well. And these are kind of necessary things. So there's showing the support, there's actually leveraging money and support into the community. And I think in the fullness of time, there might be the opportunity for the foundation to start filling in gaps in terms of maintenance that maybe are falling through the cracks at the moment, or there are gaps where there is not enough volunteer resource to shore things up. So we're still at the beginning here. I think the foundation hopefully is just going to be incredibly useful for everyone, including our corporate members, because we will hopefully start making everything kind of a bit more even, a bit more sustainable, a bit more secure.
Yeah, I think a quick summary of how I would put it, if I understand correctly, maybe this is a way that I would kind of state it, would be, it's much easier for these corporates to cut a check than it is to actually for them to somehow assemble a team to do what Rust Foundation does. Is that maybe an easy way to say it?
Definitely. Obviously, they can go out and hire a team of Rust developers to do specifically what they want them to do. But there's an awful lot of maintenance. There's an awful lot that goes into keeping the Rust project going, beyond what corporates are going to be having their specific engineers doing. This is open source is too big for one corporate to control, really. This is the case for most open source languages, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't really know too many foundations for different languages, right? Do you guys actually look at other foundations out there and try to get ideas? You're saying yes at your head.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. What's the point in reinventing the wheel? Apache has been around for ages. The Linux Foundation is huge. Python Foundation's been around for a while. There's so many foundations out there. We would have been foolish not to look around and get ideas from other people and get advice on what worked and what's not in the past.
Now, I kind of want to get a little bit of background about you, because we actually didn't really talk too much about you. You're not really a Rust developer, right? So why is it that they tagged you? It must be something special about your leadership skills or something. I'd like to hear more about that.
I am not a Rust developer in any way. I was very intrigued by by the job description. As to why they chose me above other people, I mean, I think that information is a little bit confidential. I like to think it's about trying to kind of build a consensus-based approach to serving the community. I think it was very, very important to the board that whoever led the foundation actually cared about what people in the community thought, but was also able to kind of make decisions and to live with them, and to kind of be a bit strategic about the future of the foundation as well. I think that there are other foundations that maybe have floundered a little bit, whereas I think there's an awful lot of ambition on the board, and I think in the community for us to kind of keep kind of rising and keep growing and keep getting better. So I think maybe what was attractive about me is that I have that ambition for Rust, and I've worked in other organizations where being a lot strategic, growing things from the ground up has been useful. And just building an organization, there's just a lot of really kind of practical stuff that I knew that needed to be done, like the legal stuff, like the financial stuff, like all of the cogs in the mechanism of running an actual organization. So these things I think were more important than knowing how to code in Rust, because quite frankly, if you are a really enthusiastic Rust programmer, you probably don't want to spend all your days worrying about spreadsheets or how a tweet was phrased, or maybe having to tell people who you've been working together with in the community for years that you're not going to give them what they think they are owed or by the foundation. So a few different things there, maybe.
So since you're starting this position, have you actually ever tried to code something in Rust just to kind of get an idea about what it's like, or no?
I read a bit of the book. I think at some point, I think what I'd really like to do is just sit down with someone that knows how to code Rust and have them show me, because I'm getting lost very, very quickly when I start reading about it, because I don't have any kind of background coding experience. And all I keep hearing about is the steep learning curve. And that's just for people who already know, kind of C++ and everything else. That's not even for people like me who, did a little bit of Java at some point.
Oh, so you actually have had some programming where you've done some Java. Is that what I heard correctly?
I've played with it. I have not actually built anything useful in it.
I don't think you can really play with Java. There's so much cadence and ceremony with Java. It's really hard to play with the language, I think.
It wasn't a super amount of fun. I just tried tinkering.
Like I said, I don't know if you can tinker with that. There's a lot of typing involved, but it's good to hear at least you have some type of background, right? So you have some idea when people are kind of discussing with you about some things. But like you said, it's not really part of your day job, so it's not really on your radar or up high on your list to do, right? You have other things that you think you can do to contribute, right?
Sure. I'm here to run the organization. I'm here to provide support. I'm not here to provide ideological leadership as to what the project teams should be focusing on. That's how the foundation was constituted for a reason. It was so that, the foundation wasn't kind of all powerful and in control. And I think that's a really nice place to be. I can do all the stuff that other people, don't have time for, don't have the experience of or whatever. And it's up to the people that really care and really know what they're doing, to take on those kind of ideological decisions and figure out, okay, this is where the language is going. I very much see the foundation as a support mechanism, as a mechanism to kind of empower people to use the language, to promote the language, to provide resources, hopefully, people to kind of learn and grow in the language. So I don't see that coding, I wouldn't spend any time coding even if I could during this day job.
Is there anything that's particularly difficult about the Rust Foundation that is kind of like keeping you up at night, or anything that you really worry about?
Oh God, I'm up at night anyway. I'm 3:00 in the morning laying there drafting emails for the next day in my head. um, which isn't useful. I don't think the Rust Foundation is any more difficult than any of the other foundations. I think it's very difficult trying to get consensus on everything. You know, I would love it if I could get everyone to agree on everything, but that's never going to happen. It's also, I think, at a point where I'd really like to see a bit more kind of geographic diversity, and, you know, be able to empower kind of people in other communities to be a little bit more active in the project. I think it's very easy for these kinds of foundations and these kind of projects to be very kind of US centric. So I'd really like to figure out a way of being a bit more inclusive, because there's so much talent and there's so much love for us in some of these other communities as well. You know, I've been trying to kind of speak to different communities in different countries, and you know, I had a really lovely call with some of the Nigerian chapter a few weeks ago who would love to be more involved, but they kind of assumed that the project didn't need any help. You know, they didn't even realize they could volunteer to become maintainers if they wanted to. So yeah, kind of amplifying the opportunities for people would be really nice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Is there anything come up on the short term for you guys that you guys are doing? Like maybe some kind of conference or something that you guys are really trying to push out, some kind of initiative or something, besides, of course, the funding?
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously the funding is all consuming right now because that's going to land in a couple of weeks. Beyond that, we put out a save the date for RustConf, which is going to be in person kind of / hybrid this year, which is really exciting. I can't wait to meet people in real life. Mostly I've only met people on calls, so that's going to be amazing. The dates for that are kind of 3rd to the 5th of August at the moment in Portland, Oregon. We will be putting out more information very, very soon, just kind of figuring out some of the details. So that's pretty exciting. Beyond that, we also have hopefully our cloud compute service coming into effect for project maintainers, which hopefully will massively help people's compile times and systems, so they're not clogging up their own laptops. And yeah, beyond that, obviously trying to support, you know, we're obviously going to be funding projects and hopefully putting a lot of work into supporting them to be successful as well. So I think it's pretty exciting for the next few months.
Yeah, that'll keep you busy, and that's just in the short term. I can imagine long term, there's a lot more things that are going to be coming up.
No, longer term, we are kind of working on a bit more of a strategy. You know, there's lots of talk, I think, especially about the sustainability of Rust and the kind of green credentials because it's so efficient. And that's something that I'd like to see a bit more research into and maybe explore a bit more to see, you know, to add to the kind of use case for Rust in the future.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I did see there was some research done somewhat recently. It's been popping up on Reddit a lot. But Reddit can be quite toxic, so you have to be careful.
Yes, that is the truth.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. I think you answered a lot of my questions, which is kind of like, what does this Rust Foundation even do? Like, I know that it's around, but I really don't understand what the heck they do. And I'm glad that you have the patience and didn't, you know, give me any shame for asking before we started recording.
No, it's a question I get all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And I'm hopeful, you know, I feel like if by the end of the year, more people can actually say what the Rust Foundation is and what it's for, I feel like that's part of the job. Trying actually to make it clear what the foundation is, what we're here for. But most importantly, to make sure that everyone knows we're accessible. And that, we want to talk to other Rust enthusiasts and figure out how we can help.
That's a good place for us to kind of start to wind down a bit because, yeah, we've been talking for a while. If I did want to contact the Rust Foundation, who would I contact? Like you said, you're accessible, but I don't think you want everybody coming to you first, right? You have a lot of things on your plate. Is there a general like forum I could fill in or a GitHub issue or something? I don't know how you guys usually work.
You could just go to the Rust Foundation website, and there is an email address there which comes straight to us. You know, we're not a big organization. You know, this isn't like emailing the Linux Foundation and hoping that your email will go to the right one of like hundreds of employees. There's only like 4 of us at the moment. So yeah, we monitor that email address all day, every day, and we will try and respond as soon as possible.
All right, great. Is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off? Maybe some call to action from the community about, anything you want them to take a look at or anything at all?
Really just, any ideas or whatever, please throw them our way. We're open to all comers. And yeah, hopefully the funding will be helpful. Hopefully we'll see you in RustConf.
Okay, and with that, really, I take it's a great pleasure to chat with you over this and for you to explain, what's going on with Rust Foundation. Again, I thank Florian for the introduction. He's been a fantastic person to know. Sadly, he did leave the board recently, I believe, right? So
he's been a big loss, but he's such a great leader in the Rust community, and I know his own business ventures are going from strength to strength. So we wish Florian all of the best, and he still remains a member of the foundation through his company Ferris Systems. So yeah, he's still in the family.
Okay, he's still on speed dial if you need him for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Maybe later on, after some time, we can check in what's going on in the Rust Foundation and see, how things are going. Is the strategy still the same, or maybe change in some way?
No, sure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.